9 thousandths of a second clear of Augusto Fernandez, who's enjoying a very good start to the beginning of his second season with Gas Factory Racing Tech 3. Alex Marquez in third place, and Yaya fourth, had a Binder, and Marc Marquez, who's now into turn 2. Been a bit of an under-the-radar, low-key start to his Prima Pramac Ducati career for Frankie Morbidelli, just getting adjusted to a completely different motorcycle. Frankie at the moment down in 22nd place with a 1:32.833, which puts him just over 2.5 seconds off his teammate Martin's best pace.
In terms of the riders who have changed teams then, we've got Marc Marquez in 6th place. We've got Fabio Di Gianantonio for VR46 in 13th. Alex Rins 14th on the Yamaha M1. Johan Zarco on the LCR Honda 16th. Luca Marini on the Repsol Honda 19th. Pedro Acosta's 20th at the moment, 1.9 seconds off. And Frankie Morbidelli, as Matt mentioned, 22nd. Pedro Acosta, you might not be surprised to hear, has been the busiest rider so far this morning. He's put in 26 laps, which is one short of the race distance here.
Yeah, I bet he feels like he's had his arms pulled out of his shoulder sockets, doesn't he? But he's trying to hang on down the start-finish straight. He'll sleep well tonight, that's for sure, because he'll be tired. He would have never experienced anything like the physical forces which are unique to a MotoGP bike, and you get no rest around this Valencia circuit as well. Only 4 kilometres in length. Only the Saxon ring is shorter in layout than this Ricardo Tormo circuit. It's tight, it's twisty, it's compact, and it really does push your body, certainly to places where Pedro Acosta has never pushed his body to before. He's going to be spending a fair amount of his winter in the gym, isn't he? They just draped Marc Marquez's gilet over that factory KTM.
We certainly won't miss that one out on track. Ready to race? Well, they're hypnotising us with the winter livery, so I think we can assume that's a brand new KTM R16 that Jack Miller's going to be going out on very, very shortly. Jack Miller, update on him, he's in 12th place at the moment. Been one of the more quiet riders so far on track this morning. Miller on 1:31.25. He's only done 12 laps so far.
Well, the black and white sort of zebra kind look is all in, isn't it? That's obviously the current trend, certainly in MotoGP here in Valencia. I'm definitely not going to carry that off, as I mentioned. I saw this man earlier on. Let's, well, we've just spotted that new fairing that Jack Miller will experiment very, very quickly with on the KTM RC16. Simon, you're right down there outside the KTM garage. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, I'd only just managed to get there in time to see it, and you know, the air intake was different. The wings look, I've got to say, first impression is they look one step closer to the Ducati front wings. The side fairing, you know, the one that Zarco ran most of the year, and has that step that comes out before the belly pan, you know, a real shoulder there, much like the Aprilia one that I think the Aprilia had at first. Well, that zebra coloured fairing had a kind of, it went one step further. That step has a wing going straight vertical as well up, you know, so it's like it looks like the spouting drain, you know, on a house shape. You see what I mean? Like, comes out and like you could literally, it could channel water, you know, like I imagine it's for channeling air. So they've got a quite radical new fairing there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Simon. We're going to be looking forward to seeing Jack Miller on that new radical fairing, then head out onto the circuit. Just pop back into the Gresini Ducati garage there and just saw Javi Ortiz, who is the only Repsol Honda mechanic who's made the journey with Marquez to the Ducati camp next season. Here is Luca Marini, improving his pace. Early days, of course, getting acquainted to the Repsol Honda. I'm sure he got quite a shock this morning, of course, so used to riding the Ducati Desmos Adichie at the moment. That previous lap from Luca at 1:31.704 has pushed him up to a pretty respectable 15th place. Actually, he's crept ahead of fellow Honda rider Taka Nakagami, well ahead of him. It's only half a second actually outside of Joan Mir at the moment. 1:31.230 is the best from Mir.
I say credit to me going out this morning. He's been very busy. 23 laps. The 2020 MotoGP World Champion has put it. He must be hurting after the pain in the neck that he suffered after a crash right at the start of the weekend in Valencia, and a crash that in many ways summed up Joan Mir's 2023. Of course, he was the new arrival at Repsol Honda 1 year ago, and surely could not have expected it to go as badly as it did. Not all Joan Mir's fault, of course, but only 6 points finishes, given that there were 39 opportunities this year to score points with the Tissot Sprints addition to the weekend. Joan Mir only scored points in 6 of them. 13 DNFs, including 2 did not start this year for Joan Mir, who, like Marc Marquez, found himself in the gravel trap and in pain a little bit more than he'd have liked to.
Yeah, pain in the neck here on Friday, and let's be honest, the Honda's been a pain in the neck for him ever since he threw his leg over it at this very test here 1 year ago. Tough times for Mir. There was even some talk around the midpoint of the season that he actually contemplated retirement. Fed up with beating himself up, fed up with recovering from injuries. The theme was set very early on when he crashed out on the first lap of the first 2 sprints in both Portimao and in Termas 3 or Honda. It's been a season to forget, hasn't it, for both the ex-Suzuki riders who jumped onto Hondas this year, both Alex Rins and Joan Mir. They spent as much time on treatment tables as they have out on circuit. I guess looking inside the Gresini Ducati garage, Julian Marquez doesn't have to split his time now, does he, between different garages, now that the Marquez siblings are reunited. Of course, they were previous teammates briefly at Repsol Honda.
For one race.
Yeah, for one Grand Prix. Emphasis on the briefly.
Yeah, fortunately, Marc Marquez with that crash in the first race of 2020 in Valencia, which in many ways you could trace that back to the beginning of the end of Marc Marquez's long collaboration with Repsol Honda, because it was at that first Grand Prix, the Spanish Grand Prix in late July of 2020 after the COVID pandemic, that he had that big crash at turn 3, which led to a series of arm surgeries, 4 surgeries in all for Marc Marquez to try and get that rectified. Of course, he had the diplopia issues as well, which came as a result of that huge crash in Indonesia. So that was where it returned most recently at the beginning of last season, that crash in the morning warm-up. And that ultimately began to drive Marc Marquez towards the point where he reached the final straw, where he was just bashing himself up. And one of my abiding memories, madam, one of my abiding images of this 2023 season. My abiding image of today will be Marc Marquez's smile when he got off the Gresini Ducati, but one of my other abiding images of the season was Marc Marquez slumped over the tyre barrier at the Saxon Ring, the circuit that he has owned for the best part of a decade, well over a decade, since Marc Marquez has been nigh and unbeatable around there. He had 5 crashes over the German Grand Prix weekend, the last of which came in that morning warm-up, and he then decided, for that weekend at least, that enough was enough.
There's a bit of frustration here, lingering over from Sunday. We just saw a gesture there, didn't we? An arm raised from Marco Bezzecchi as he comes on to Marc Marquez, who's clearly not at optimum racing speed. These two have got a bit of bad blood. There's already been a very recent history. Of course, Marquez into turn 3 on the very first lap of our season finale just a couple of days ago, cleaning out Marco Bezzecchi. He went for several high-speed barrel rolls through the gravel trap, and this is all just carrying on over, isn't it, from Sunday?
Well, Marc's usually the one doing the following, isn't he? This will be a rare occasion where Marc Marquez probably doesn't need to follow anymore, given that he's got a Ducati underneath him, but Marco Bezzecchi is certainly letting Marc know he's there.
Yeah, I was just about to say, as Bezzecchi powered down the start-finish straight here, if Marquez had actually kept himself at sort of flying speed, Bezzecchi might have been able to get an early look at Marquez on that Ducati. They dropped, they're now down through turn 14, the final corner. Looks like Marquez and Bez will peel back into pit lane, but all getting close, up close and personal, as they were a little bit too up close and personal last time out. Simon Crayford just telling us that Jack Miller's heading out on circuit on the a very distinctive looking new KTM fare, and that one will not be hard to spot. Well, you can probably spot that from the moon, to be honest. Just having a quick look, a glance out of our corner of our screen. Maverick Viñales as well, we're just seeing this. Here's Marquez into turn 4, and he's just cruising in. I watched Bezzecchi pick up the arm, because he was on a fast lap there. So that was why Bezzecchi was getting frustrated, and of course of all the riders it could have been to impede him on that lap, it was number 93. So Marquez then back in. 8 laps was his first run. He's just done a further 9 laps in the second one, and up to 17 laps. And while we were looking at the Bez Marquez skirmish, Maverick Vinales on the factory Aprilia has just gone quickest on his 25th lap of the day, a 1:30.142 from the pole man last weekend. We just stayed quiet there just to see if we could...
Impression there, didn't you, of Marc Marquez? After his first run, of course, when he was beaming at the first run on board that Ducati, it was very much business as usual, and the game face on for Marc Marquez when he got off the Gresini Ducati for the second time. He's got that little first one out of the way, and the joy of jumping on that Gresini Ducati after a Honda that has not been particularly rider-friendly for the last year or two. But now Marc Marquez has got that early euphoria out of the way, and he's now thinking about the job of trying to resume that incredible career that he's been on until the difficult 2020, 21, 22 and 23 for Marc Marquez. Pecco Bagnaia continues on his way, the world champion currently in 5th.
Yeah, croaky voice yesterday, I'm sure a bit of a sore head as well. But if you're not going to celebrate on Sunday night, you never will celebrate. I think he did say as well, Lewis, his emotions, an emotion on Sunday he never experienced before in his racing career. Of course, dealing with the pressure cooker atmosphere, the cauldron atmosphere of a final round title decider, but winning, successfully defending the championship with a victory. It's just that cherry on the top, isn't it? The icing on the cake. And he said, winning a championship with a victory, something he's always dreamed about in MotoGP, and it did feel like it made that extra super sweet, and he sat sort of relieved, the weight lifting off his shoulders in the World Champions press conference, and he said, I don't think I've ever felt like I've been more on cloud 9, more of a sensation and a feeling like it's not going to get much better than this, to be honest.
Yeah, real feeling of accomplishment for Pecco Bagnaia, who, I guess, it's very difficult to enjoy a World Championship battle like that when the pressure is so high, and that pressure brought upon him by Jorge Martin in the latter stage of this season. As we touched on earlier on, Bagnaia has certainly been through the ringer this season. It might look on the face of it when you look on it in 10 years' time on Wikipedia and look back on the 2023 MotoGP Championship and think that Bagnaia won it relatively comfortably in the end by 39 points, but the crash he had on the first lap of the Catalan Grand Prix, which frightened all of us, let alone what it must have felt for Pecco Bagnaia. The painful landing and then being hit by Brad Binder in the leg. Many of us were concerned when that happened, how long it would be until we saw Pecco Bagnaia again in MotoGP. He was back on the bike 5 days later at Misano, and then went on to finish on the podium in both the Tissot Sprint and the race itself. He was absolutely spent at the end of that Misano weekend. We talk a lot about the brilliance and the quality and the talent of Pecco Bagnaia, but he showed at Misano this year in particular just how far he was prepared to dig deep in order to retain that title.
Yeah, the most GP wins, the most podiums, the most poles, the most front rows, and he led more laps than any other rider. Just a few reasons why Pecco Bagnaia was back-to-back world champion in 2023. 2024 has started in a pretty positive fashion, hasn't it, for the factory Aprilia team, with Maverick Vinales currently leading the way, courtesy of a 1:29.924. It's going to be a tough test here today for his teammate Aleix Espargaro, still feeling the after effects of his right leg injury after contact from Miguel Oliveira on the opening lap of that Tissot Sprint in Qatar. But what are Aprilia working on? What are their targets to improve that RSGP into 2024 and beyond? I'm delighted to say it's always a pleasure to hear him on the live. A great character, a great engineer as well. It's Aprilia boss Paolo Bonora. Enjoy Simon.
He is. Paolo, first of all, wanted to get an idea from you what today is about, you know, what things you have to work on. Looking at the bike as Maverick parks right next to us just now, I can see very, very little difference. But I have seen some sensors on the back of I imagine it's to...
For sure, you have seen the swinging arm. This is one of the most we will test during this day. and probably it will be the base for the 2024 bike. Relating to the sensor you have seen, it is to understand better the position of the rider during a lap, in particular in the straight line.
Just one more thing before I let you go, Paolo, is this temperature today is so low. Can you tell us what riders are struggling with out there? Also, I imagine they're being affected by the wind.
Yeah, for sure. It is necessary to be much more careful on during the first lap, because it is completely different the track compared the race. For sure, the wind affects a lot the riding behavior, so it's necessary to be very careful in the entry phase.
Paolo, I've just thought of something that I think the listeners will be interested in, and if we can take one step out, maybe we'll get a better signal. And that is your schedule between now, when this day finishes, and going to Kuala Lumpur. I imagine, some of your guys need time off, the ones that work in the garage, but I imagine there's very little time off for you and the engineers and people building parts before you have to put the bikes in the crate.
Yeah, you are fully right, Simon. There will be no holidays, for sure, because during this part of the season it's necessary to refurbish everything, to be prepared for the next season, prepare all the parts and prepare the new bikes. So the plan is to make the shipment for Sepang of the 2024 bike on the 19th of January. So there is no time at all. It is necessary to work during the winter season, and because for us it's a winter season, it's a never-ending story. It's necessary to be very focused, both in the technical department at home and with the mechanics here in racetrack, in Aprilia factory, to do all the job.
And normally come on a Sunday with a setup which allows Pecco to be always fighting. Let's not forget that I think he's the only rider who's always been able, I think maybe with one exception, to be fighting for a podium in every single Grand Prix.
There was only one Grand Prix of the whole year, Paolo. It was Argentina, where Pecco didn't either finish on the podium in the sprint or in the Grand Prix. That's the consistency which clearly you need to win the World Championship. He was, though, pushed all the way by Jorge Martin. Of course, they've been fighting in different teams, but on the same bike. And it's kind of fascinating for us to watch it from the outside, because they're two complete